All right, peace and shalom, family. Peace and shalom. What's going on? It's your brother, DivineProspect, King Harbinger Ministries. We back with another Freestyle Friday session. Man, last week's last week's Freestyle Friday session. I'm getting tongue tied. Started to go viral. I don't know what was going on with that. I guess y'all love that type of conversation, that type of interaction. Well, I'm glad y'all enjoyed it. Right now it's edging on 12K views. And people's been sending me a lot of messages behind that and leaving a lot of comments and everything. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that content. Anybody that did watch it, if you haven't seen any previous Freestyle Friday sessions in a while, go back and check it out. We probably got better content than that on other Freestyle Friday sessions. So you may want to check that out. But yeah, I do appreciate the people that came through, left comments, the people that watched it live, people that got saw it on the replay. So glad you enjoyed it. Rodney. Well, this is the time that we start almost every Friday. You know what I mean? So actually, this is kind of early. This is before 11 p.m. when the show officially starts. So technically, we're early. But if you do have to head to bed, no problem. Go ahead and check out the replay. Be sure to leave a comment as well, and we'll comment back. And if you can go get on the show one time when we do one of our light work sessions during the day, we'll be sure to catch you there at an earlier time. All right. Yep. So, all right. So I'm gonna give you all a moment for y'all to pile on in. Make sure as you're coming on in, you hit that thumbs up button. Hit that thumbs up button as you're coming on in. And also make sure you hit subscribe if you're brand new. Hit that bell notification so you can get warned every time we go live. And also make sure you share this video on all social media platforms. Okay. Now, what I want to say is I had there was a session that I was on Clubhouse because I know last week I had played a session for y'all. Well, actually, I got a chance to speak in that room. I think it was yesterday. I wasn't mistaken. And the question was, does Inky and Enlil overlap in the Bible? Something along those lines. And they was making all these assertions and everything like that. So I'm going to put the video up so that way y'all can check it out. It should be on the channel by Sunday. But if you have Patreon, it'll be there tomorrow. So you'll get like 24 hours to see it in advance before I release it live on the YouTube channel. Very fascinating discussion. I guess they expect Hebrew Israelites to be ignorant and unlearned and unstudied. As if you bring something in regards to the ancient Near East, we're not familiar with it. We don't know how to handle that type of information. We don't know how to stand flat-footed and firm on the scriptures and our Israelite heritage and culture, and or that we could see objectively outside of our perspective and look at the full spectrum of data that's placed on the table and be able to handle it appropriately. I mean, that can be done. Matter of fact, when you go and you watch this, you'll see that that's what was demonstrated. That was my purpose of going on there, was to try and get them to be very exact in the claims that they were making and be able to substantiate it. And one person made an attempt to do it. The other people on there who was talking all of that stuff before I got on there, it was like quiet. It's pretty silent on there. So when you go check it out, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is why I equip y'all with all of this content that we share on the channel, as well as all those books and articles we put on the Patreon, because the objective is to educate you so you're aware of these things. So when people make these comments, it doesn't take you off guard. I mean, going in there, I felt comfortable, right? It was confident, it was comfortable, and had a great discussion, shut a lot of things down by asking critical questions. And it was just, I don't know, man. That stuff, when that stuff goes unchecked, that starts to draw a whole bunch of people away along with it, with misinformation and pseudoisms. And unfortunately, knowing that stuff is not have no basis in reality in regards to truth. So it does have a basis in your imagination, but in the reality of truth, it's non-existent, right? And I can tell that most people who was making these claims have not read a lot of material in that area. And you'll see as the conversation goes along who really knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. But if you was to listen to the room prior to, man, it was a show. It was a show. So we had to shut down some of that information respectfully and establish truth. and hold brothers and sisters to sources and have them admit that some of the things that they're getting is what they believe in is their opinion. And in previous rooms that I've been in with that particular house, man, it's just all I gotta do is shake my head, man. The stuff that they be saying in there is wild. However, I'm familiar with a lot of it. A lot of brothers and sisters in that group are Nuwabian, so they learn under the tutelage of Dr. Malachi Z. York. I have about 70 of his books that I've read, and I have associates who are still Nuwabians who I interface with frequently to stay sharp in regards to their knowledge of Nuwapu and what they share. And some of what I let you hear last week is part of that, but I should do a series on how to shut a lot of that stuff down. I think that'll be important to do that, because I actually worked on a book called 360 Questions to Ask Dr. Malachi Z. York. Because he wrote a book called 360 Questions to Ask the Hebrew Israelite, and I was working on a 360 Questions to Ask Dr. Malachi Z. York on Nuwabians or something like that. And I think I was up to question like 52 or something like that. I never got to finish it. But I might finish it one day just to publish it. Because I know when I first introduced it and started speaking on it, the Wabi was like, "Oh, that book, Dr. Malachi Z. York did that book a long time ago. And you just now." I said, "Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I wasn't alive at that time. So for him to make a book like that and me not be alive to challenge it, obviously, if I produce something, it's going to come much later. But since nobody has done that work, if you're asking questions, we're going to give answers. And then we're going to, because I was also answering every one of those questions. Now we're going to give answers to them, but we're going to ask you questions back in return, right? Because I only appreciate two-way conversations. I don't mind interrogation, but after a while, I'm like, okay, are you done? Let me ask you some questions, right? A lot of people ask a lot of questions to avoid being criticized themselves and going through peer review of assertions that they make, but we don't play that game here. That's not how we get down, all right? All right. So let me go ahead and give some shout outs here and see what's going on. Shout out to Eli, Shiva, Yashael, Rodney Bryant, Black Ash, Shalom, Stephen Mikhail Key, Shalom, Sharon Hammond, Shalom. How you liking that laptop? Laptop good? All the laptops have been shipped out from the back to school giveaway. All the laptops have been shipped out. So I got a couple of confirmations. If you received your laptop, please email us back to confirm, so that way we know you got it with a picture, video, or something like that, so we know that you got it. Okay. Shout out to Bergen Paris in the building. Shalom. Stephanie Yosef. Shalom. Lataris Harris. Shalom. Lion from Zion 777. Shalom. Solomon Ben David. Shalom. Seth. Shalom. Kaya Houston. Shalom. I think you should have gotten yours too, sis. Confirm. Let me know. Shout out to okay, I see your message, Sharon. I just now see it. My bad. Shout out to James Lockhart in the building. Shalom. Sister Aviya V. Shalom. Sorry I missed an appointment. I was caught on a meeting for work, but I spoke to Gail. We're going to reschedule it, sis, and get in touch with you as soon as possible. Okay. Shout out to JIB. Shalom. Gavin Miller. Shalom. What's going on, King? Benny Wheat. Shalom. He said, I tried to squeeze in that convo last night about the 3 persons or 3 manifestation Clubhouse with a very valid point to make, but I left. No space to talk. Yeah, that's how it goes down sometimes in Clubhouse, man. Sometimes I be itching to jump in and contribute, and they just be going off for a while or whatever, and there's no opportunity really to speak, so I don't say nothing, right? But it is what it is. Shout out to Remarkable Life Ministries in the building. Shalom. Taki Rika Styles, Shalom, Still I Rise, Da'at, Shalom, Abed Cole, Shalom, Derek Kimball, Shalom, Luke 12:51, Truth, Shalom, Ariel, Shalom. Oh, wow. Congratulations, my brother. Congratulations, man. Congratulations. I know exactly how that feels. So congratulations to that. Make sure you keep this brother and his Isha and his family lifted in prayer. Congratulations, my brother. Good to hear. Good to hear. Shout out to Gene, Shalom. All right. So Gene, that's not Gene, Derek. Excellent question. You can email us at naturalpathtoeden@gmail.com, naturalpathtoeden@gmail.com, and we'll hook you up. Okay. So email us there and we'll hook you up. All right. Shout out to Lifted in the building. Shalom. I see you. All right, family. As you're coming on in, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you share this video on all your social media platforms. I need this video and every video going forward to catch traction like last week's video. Last week's video is still going crazy. You know what I'm saying? So let's get traction on this video and other past Freestyle Fridays where we went in, so people can get more of this information. A lot of people came in to the truth. You know what I'm saying? We had about 6 people who hit me up and said, oh man, somebody just shared this video with me. You know, you was breaking down the history and going into the text, and I like that type of style or whatever. How can I learn more about this Hebrew Israelite thing? All praise to the Most High, man. All praise to the Most High. And they said, I really appreciated how you handled that lady on your platform. I'm like, yeah, what did you expect? I don't know. I don't know what you expected, but yeah, that's how we get down over here at KHM. I can't speak for no other organization, camp, congregation, etc. But at KHM, that's how we get down. All right, because everybody has a different method in accomplishing this task of waking people up into the truth, and this is how we get down. Very diplomatic and tactful as much as we possibly can, sprinkled with some patience and self-control, because that is actually how we execute what we attempt to convey to the audience. And what you'll see with that approach, it frustrates people that you are so reserved and that you are composed and you are very tactful and diligent in how you deploy words, points, etc. And after a while, a person gets frustrated by that, because it rouses something up in them. That's what happens. So, we just ambassadors over here putting that work for the Most High Yah, letting people know about this kingdom, preparing them to receive the kingdom and for Yah to receive them. All right. Shout out to Chris Hendo, 124. The Race, hopefully I'm saying that right. Shalom. Nathan James, I see you. Shalom. Okay. All right. So shout out to Thomas Jackson. I see you. Shalom. All right. So as we going on, and also, you know how we do, we always give an opportunity for the trolls to come on to talk about their grievances, to get the smoke session up and running, and we give them the Surgeon General's warning. All right. You know how we get down. Shout out to Ice You Cole. What's going on, King? Yeah, if you can't stay up, then check this out on a replay. All right. Check it out on a replay. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and give some updates. So to everybody who is reaching out to us to join KHM, if you've clicked the link for sign up and waiting on next steps, we've emailed everybody. So whatever email address that you signed up with, we've emailed you. So please check your other inbox, check your spam, check your extra, whatever inbox you have, because a lot of people are reaching out to us for membership, but not a lot of people are responding. Some people we've called, some we've emailed. We're going to be in texting as well based on information you send us. So please stay on the lookout for voicemail, for a text, or for email if you've clicked the link to sign up, because there's additional steps that needs to be done in order for officially onboard you as a member of KHM. And if you're interested to know more about what KHM is about, go back on this channel. There is an onboarding session that I did where I just speak about KHM, and I'll let you know what the process is, what it involves, and everything else like that. Or you can go back and check out all of the chapter launch videos that we've done, because they also have the same information in those chapter launch videos. Okay. All right. Shout out to Jonathan SOT in the building. Shalom, my brother Scott Garrett Headley. Shalom, Kim. What's going on, Sister V? I see you in the building. What's going on, sis? What's going on? All right. All right. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. Also, I have a couple of the posts that I'm posting up. Shout out to Sister Anna, who's been helping us out with our marketing. Appreciate the assistance, sis. Brother Seth, if you in here, brother, let me know when you receive those books. All right, let me know when you receive those books. And then I'm going to send you the additional items that you requested so you have it. And also, we're going to start shipping out more items next week. So anything that's been outstanding, you guys will get it soon, between now and the beginning of September. All right. So anything that's been delayed, we apologize on that. Sometimes we got to wait on our Connect to send us a shipment of items before we can get them out. One of the things we've been waiting on for some time is our cast and lot set. So those, we get those done from scratch. So hopefully those should be in by next week so we can begin shipping them out. And anything else that's been outstanding, let us know so we can make sure if we missed it, we get on top of it. All right. Okay. Also, as y'all know, YouTube has demonetized this channel. for whatever reason. Sunday, we have an opportunity to reapply for monetization, so we'll see what happens. But in the interim, if you want to support everything that we do here, look down in the description below. You'll see it says support. And then also the best way to support this channel is by signing up for our Patreon, because you get immediate access to books, articles, biblical language courses, audio Bibles, Bible Lands DVD content, exclusive blogs from me, video and footage from me, behind the scenes, early access to our exclusive shows like Incognito and others. All of that is on the Patreon. The moment you sign up, you get immediate access to almost 800 pieces of content that we have posted on our Patreon. It's a 24/7, 365 after party. So once this live stream is over, you can always go and sign up for the Patreon and check out all the additional content over there. You can never go through all of it in one day. It will take weeks, months, for some people even years to consume all the content that we have on the Patreon, and we continue to add to it. I haven't added to it in the past week. Been very busy with work. However, that will change this weekend, and next week we'll be adding some more content for you guys, okay? All right, so thank you all for your support as well. There's other methods in which you can support. You can support KHM directly by clicking on the link and sending a donation, or we have Cash App and PayPal. All that information is in the description below. Or if there's anything else that we can serve you in any capacity, help, assist in any way, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. We also put up a video recently advertising our ancient silver scrolls keychain pendants. So if you're interested in getting that, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com so we can hook you up. We also have the cast and lot set as well. Email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com if you also want to be in the queue to receive one of those as well. All right. Also, we have a video coming up. I didn't play it on here because I know if certain things have music in it and it's not a short, then YouTube is quick to place a strike. And I'm trying to be very leery in regards to what is posted now because of how YouTube is acting recently. So a short will go with that. And that's just a video about us hitting over 40,000 subscribers. So we want to thank the Most High first and foremost, and all of y'all for making that possible. Thank you all so much for sharing our videos and our content, getting people to sign up and subscribe. Thank you to all our new Patreons, all our new KHM members. Thank you guys for committing and rocking with us, and all our current members. Thank y'all as well. Y'all have been with us day ones. You know what I'm saying? And we appreciate that. It's nothing that any platform can do to keep this truth from coming off of these airways. By the power of Yah, it will continue to disturb the prince of the power of the air. Continue to disturb that. And no matter where we at, our voice will continue to reverb, and that reverb will send a resonance that will cause a disturbance with any adversarial forces that seek to undermine the truth that's coming forth. That's just what it is. And that's what it will continue to be. All praise to the Most High. All right. Shout out to Sean McGee in the building. Shalom, King. What's going on? The souls of our ancestors. Shalom, shalom. What's going on? Yes, so just email us. Just email us and we'll hook you up. Email us and we'll hook you up. All right. Shout out to my brother John and Dorsey in the building. Shalom. Lawrence Smith, I see you. Shalom. What's going on? King Ghost, what's going on? Ascent of Phoenix. Shalom. So Ascent of Phoenix says, what's your view on preterism? Here we go. What's your view on preterism? So this is what I'm going to do. I don't subscribe to preterism in any way, shape, or form. However, I do understand its arguments, and what I want to do is a PowerPoint on preterism to show you that it comes from the Roman Catholic Church. Now, that doesn't mean the Roman Catholic Church is bad, wicked, or evil. People have that type of perspective when it comes to the Roman Catholic Church, and rightfully so based on the history of the institution or whatever, right? However, there's a reason why they've created that. Preterism was designed to pull the heat off the papacy. And when you see all the players involved and how it evolved over time, you'll understand how it got to the form that is in today. Yeah, a lot of Jesuits behind it as well. But that's another conversation altogether. But that's why I don't subscribe to preterism. I don't think the text fully supports it. And I don't think that the external evidence, when you do textual criticism and dating when these things were written, supports it either. But let me give you a handy guide. This is something I've shared on the Patreon. This is why you got to sign up for the Patreon. I'm about to give you a book. So when you see terms like preterism and terms similar to that and you don't understand or can't define these terms, let me give you a good go-to document for this. And again, this is why you need to sign up for the Patreon, because it's a repository of all this information. All right. So we're gonna look this up together. All right. Let me pull up the book so you can see it. And share it on the screen. All right. Here's the book right here. It's called The Westminster Dictionary of Theological Terms, 2nd edition. Nearly 7,000 theological terms with more than 1,000 new terms by Donald K. McKim. All right, so you want to open this up in a PDF viewer. I have Foxit. It's a free PDF viewer. Some of y'all may have Adobe, right? What you want to do is click on the find option or the search option and just type in Preterism, preterism, okay? You hit enter. Let's see if it picks it up. It may not pick it up as preterism. Let's do preterist. Let's do that. See if it picks it up. If not, there we go. All right, let's zoom in. Yeah, so it doesn't have it as preterism, it has it as preterist, and that's fine. All right, here it is right here. And again, we have tons of resources like this on the Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. Sign up, support this channel, support the works of Divine Prospect and the KHM team as we continue to do our R&D, research and development, to bring you guys all of this innovative information, all the program services and products, etc. And then you get easy access to content like this. So this comes from the Latin word praeteritas, which means pass. Of course, it comes from the Latin, because I told you the source of where this doctrine comes from. An interpretive view of the book of Revelation that maintains all its prophecies have already been fulfilled and are past or were being fulfilled when the book was being written. A lot of people also refer to Matthew chapter 24, where it says, this generation. Okay? So this is the preterist view. This is what they teach. It's not just what we say the book of Revelation has been fulfilled, but all the prophecies that Yeshua Bar Yosef, that he proclaimed, or these apocalyptic perspectives that he proclaimed in the Gospels, have already come to pass. Most of it being fulfilled in 70 AD, and when the reign of it being fulfilled before the close of the 1st century AD. That is what it teaches. Okay. Now, what's interesting about that, there are certain texts that are dated after the 1st century. One of them being the book of 2 Peter. That's interesting. But that's another conversation altogether. Thank you for pointing it out. But again, preterism, I've been dealing with this topic for about 6 years now. About 6.5 years. Been dealing with preterism for a while now, as far as like publicly having discourses on Debate Talk for You, other YouTube channels, etc. I've been doing this for some time, even on Facebook one time. And it's a very interesting subject matter. There's a lot of critical questions that the question still begs that haven't been addressed. Everything that they've asked me, I've answered, because again, I studied this thoroughly. And when I go through the history with them, some of them are just unfamiliar with it and they try to dismiss it. And I said, no, you can't dismiss it. I'm showing you the provenance of this idea, where it comes from and why it was established and why you can't answer certain questions. So anyway, so hopefully that begins to give you a shorthand answer of that. I'm going to put that down as one of the many lectures that I want to start this fall. And yeah, we're going to knock that out the park, man. Preterism, it makes some good arguments, but ultimately falls flat on its face, because there's some ditches that is dug and it steps right in and falls in its face. So you just leave that thing alone. All right. Okay. All right. So let me see who else is in the building. Shout out to Jacolius Gem, shalom. Joe Nuff, shalom. Brandon Blackwell, shalom. Sister Queen D, shalom. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you enjoyed that. All praise to the Most High. Sade, shalom. Let's see. Anybody else I missed? I think I got everybody. Shout out to J Rod. I see you, shalom. Yes, we are, Sister Sharon, in regards to the services and programs that we offer. So yes, once you go through that process, please email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. You will be an invaluable asset for this ministry. That's something we've been praying on for some time. So please hit us up, because what we want to do is we want to bid for government contracts so we can offer our programs and services to our community. We don't want any organizations who do not look like us, who do not live in our communities, to try and offer us services and programs that are not designed to alleviate the underlying societal ills that keep us in the predicaments in which we live, which puts us at a disadvantage in competing at getting equity of the resources necessary for us to overturn that which is keeping us oppressed. So when these are organizations and programs that come from out of our community, by those who look like us, for us and by us, FUBU, right? The chances of success is much greater, because not only are the services and programs we offer there to alleviate that problem, it's designed to bring people to the truth. So yes, we are highly interested in that. Please email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. We would love to work with you, sis. And I definitely appreciate you for throwing that out there. All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. Shout out to Dawid Ben Israel. Shalom. The Living Word Initiative in the building. Shalom. So, hey, Truth Seeker, Shalom. Why you keep asking about that book, man? That book is a bunch of foolishness. Yo, that book is a bunch of foolishness. When I read that joint, I was like, wow, and I just laughed. Nobody knows who authored it. That's the first problem. The organization behind it, they take the credit, but we don't know who authored that book. That's the first issue that I have. The second thing, it talks about Jesus a lot, okay? And a lot of things they say about Jesus is unfounded. So if you want me to do a critical analysis of that text, I have no problem with doing it. I'll find my physical copy of it and I'll go through it. But please, please stay away from that book. It cannot be substantiated. It makes a lot of wild claims about the universe as well that is not astronomically exact. So I would just tread lightly. I read it because it was a challenge somebody gave me back in 2012. And I read it and I was like, wait a second. This seems extremely off. Went and did the research. Actually went to a university in New York and did some research on it. And I was like, oh, I just shook my head. So I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying. Yeah, Truth Seeker. Here, let me write it in there. That's the book right there, Abbott. Al the Galilean, do you have a book on Patreon about the scapegoat and the atonement? Maybe. Possibly, because I have books on the rituals in ancient Israel. So one of them would be that. So I'm sure there's some text on it. I got almost 400 books. So there's a book on there about that. However, what question do you have specifically about that? Because I've addressed it on here before. Okay. Yeah. I don't know who your brother is that actually read that, Truth. Please invite him onto the show. He can come on right now. We go through it, or another time. I like talking to people about stuff like this, because I can give you a soliloquy, a monologue, a lecture on it, right? It's not the same thing of me interacting with people, right? Because a lot of people think this is some esoteric deep knowledge and all of that. When I go through the history by itself kills it. Second thing, the claims that it's made in the text itself is not consistent. There's so many inconsistencies in it. It's crazy, right? But the stuff it talks about Jesus, man, it's okay. That's a whole nother subject matter, right? But if he's giving you to read it, I would just say read it with caution. I don't tell people don't read nothing. You know, we're not closed-minded over here. Read it. But also research it. This is where the CRAP method comes in. I tell you all the time, CRAAP. It's a method for discerning the authenticity of sources. So use the CRAP method to put it through a filter to ascertain whether or not it is authentic source of truth, and if the claims could be substantiated. All right. Yeah, it is definitely all over the place. All over the place is just being nice. Inconsistent is just to shake my head. But this is the thing. This is why even this channel sometimes is better than a lot of Christian channels. A lot of Christian channels, oh, dismiss it, whatever. Now we dive into it. We invite people to come on. Yo, you believe in that? You subscribe to it? Come on in. Just like the brothers in our community that subscribe to that Book of Mormon. I got that Book of Mormon. Where is it? Back there. But also Doctrines and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Christ. Don't just read the Book of Mormon by itself. You got to go to Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price. When you read that, you're like, oh, you'll really know what the Book of Mormon is about. And don't stop there. Tons of elders in the Mormon church have written works on this stuff. You got to read that stuff. That stuff is hilarious, man. No disrespect. I'm going to say this. Brigham Young University, they do some good research there. I ain't going to lie. They put out some great papers I read. I'm like, whoa, this is good. So I'm not going to front on that. But what I'm saying is, if you think the Book of Mormon is our text, that's what I laugh at. That's what I think is hilarious. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000% untrue. Leave that alone. And if you have not read the Pearl of Great Price or Doctrines and Covenants, you don't know what you're reading in the Book of Mormon. You have no clue. No clue. And if you believe Joseph Smith truly found those gold tablets that the angel Moroni helped him to translate to give you the Book of Mormon, and not just the Book of Mormon, you also got the Pearl of Great Price and Doctrines and Covenants. Got a lot of questions for you. Is Joseph Smith black? That's what I'm going to ask. Did you know Joseph Smith used to be a soothsayer? Man, I don't want to get into this, man. I don't want to get into this, man. I don't want to get into this. All right, look, I talked about this before, Bergen. No problem. Locks is not against scripture. I don't know who's saying this. Well, I can't say that. I know a lot of people who've said this, but I don't know why they keep saying this. Locks is part of scripture. What are you talking about? There's plenty of people had locks in scripture. Your hair locks naturally if you leave it to its own vices. If it's like my hair, see this? It's going to lock naturally. That's just the way it is. So several people had locks in the text. I don't know why people are saying that we're not to have locks. Are they? So I heard one Bruce say it was unclean. It's like, what? I just shake my head like, wow. Maybe the people you know don't keep their locks tidy, but yeah, any type of hair you have should have some form of maintenance on it. So I'm not sure. But anyway, all right. Oh, you want the books, Chris? I got you. There you go. The Pearl of Great Price and Doctrines and Covenants. You can actually read it for free online. So shout out to Royal Gem in the building. Shalom. My brother Emmanuel E in the building. Be treading heavy in Clubhouse streets. I see you, King. Shalom. Ak Jiminy says Paul of Tarsus was a soothsayer too. Hey, Ak, let me give you this link, man. Give you this link. Here's a link for you. All right, click this link right here, right? And join the conversation. Click the link. So Lifted says, if you don't mind talking about your position on salvation, one is the Sabbath keepers, Torah livers, and one is believing in the Lord and Savior Messiah. And do you have any teachings? I have tons of teachings on salvation. What I would recommend is a lengthy lecture, but you can watch maybe 3 sittings. I would do maybe about an hour and 15 minutes of it. I have a lecture called Capital Punishment, Human Sacrifice for the Atonement of Sin in the Bible. All right. And I have one called All Sins Created Equal. I did both of these back in 2017. They're oldies but goodies. Any of the mods, please grab the links to those videos, drop them in the chat so Lifted could check it out. Okay. And I also did one, I think it's around the same time, about getting the Hebraic New Testament message. All right, that one as well. So I have tons of texts on that. So just let me know. So Yim Yahoo. Well, when we say customs, that cannot be true. That was an African custom before it even got to India. How do we know that? We have mummies that still have hair in it from Egypt and Sudan. They have locks in their hair. And we also, going in the interior of Africa, we also see other entities. And I'll say entities meaning, I'll say humans, but some of them, they call them early hominids or archaic humans or whatever, that we have hair from. So we see what the hair looks like. So I wouldn't say it's an East Indian custom per se. Yes, they do it in East India, but it's also done in other areas of the world as well. So, yeah. All right. So Gaal, the Galilean, I don't know if you heard me address you earlier, my brother. I said, what do you want to know specifically about the scapegoat? There's no such word as scapegoat in the Hebrew. It does not exist. There's no word there that says scapegoat. It's Azazel. No word called scapegoat. That comes from the early English translations. We're talking about the Tyndale Bible. We're talking about the King James Version because it's tied to a doctrine. But the original text does not have it. That's why if you go to more modern critical edition Bibles, they properly translate it as Azazel. That's the Hebrew word that's there, because you're giving one to one entity and one to another entity. There's no such thing as scapegoat. As far as atonement, meaning covering over, this was a process that's done to cover over all of the unintentional sins committed by Israelites. Once a year, everyone is exonerated. Okay. And the purpose of this is to demonstrate Yah's mercy. And it's a whole process you find in Leviticus chapter 16. If you go to Leviticus chapter 23 and Deuteronomy chapter 16, it also speaks on, well, Deuteronomy doesn't talk about it, but Leviticus chapter 23 speaks on the Day of Atonement. So it lets you know what your obligations are on that day. And Leviticus 16 tells you what the priests do on that day. All right. So hopefully that answers your question, but there's no such word as scapegoat in Hebrew. Okay. You said, would you recommend Zondervan to learn both Aramaic and Greek? Yes. I actually have Zondervan stuff right here. I have the Zondervan for Ugaritic, Syriac, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. I have all of them over there. And we also have courses on the Patreon for those languages as well, if you're interested. All right. All right. So Gaal, the Galilean. So what do you have on Azazel? So if I give you anything about Azazel, it has to be something that is outside the canon of scripture. We can go to Enoch, or we can go to other extra biblical works that speak on this entity. But Enoch comes from an oral tradition that was written down during the Grecian captivity, well, actually during the Hasmonean dynasty, because they was not captive to the Greeks at that time when these works started being produced. But nonetheless, it was an oral tradition that is maintained over time, that began to be written down. Some of it is contemporary to the time was laid down. Some of it is older oral traditions, but that's where you're going to get replete information in regards to Azazel, as far as the oral tradition behind Azazel. But looking at Leviticus 16 on its own, it is an entity in which all sin is ascribed. You see that same idiom mentioned in the book of Enoch. Ascribe all sin to Azazel. And that's why a goat is sent out to the east to satisfy Azazel and to bring all the sins back to him. That's part of Leviticus chapter 16. All right. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. Somebody mentioned about marijuana. Is that what you're talking about there? All right. I'll show you something interesting real quick. All right. If that's what y'all interested in, let me know. Y'all talking about, I'm not sure what y'all talking about right now. Shout out to my brother Tyrell John in the building. Shalom. Yes, Brandon Blackwell. There's more than one book of Enoch. First Enoch is probably going to be the most original. Second Enoch and later is skeptical in regards to its provenance, right? So a lot of things come into question with that. Okay. Hold on 1 second. All right. Yeah. So Dennis McMillan, what you're talking about is in Tel Arad. So Tel Arad had a mock temple there. It was a smaller version of the large temple that was in Jerusalem. And they found some what we call cannabis or marijuana remains, charred remains on one of the altars there, right? So there's no proof that we had something like that in the temple in Jerusalem, but mock temples outside of Jerusalem that had altars, we found one where they actually have the residue of that on an altar, and they discovered that. There's also a great article called Getting High with the Most High, very open-minded article that you can read and dealing with incest and a bunch of other things. If you're interested in that, that's also on the Patreon. Sign up for the Patreon. Look up Getting High with the Most High. All right. Okay. So in regards of if the Israelites smoked the marijuana, we don't have no evidence of that. The only thing we have is what I just mentioned to you that's found in Tel Arad, the temple in Tel Arad. Temple remains in Tel Arad. The altar. So that's the closest we have it. And it's not in the context of actually rolling a joint up and smoking it. May have been used for incest purposes. Could have been used to give a buzz, right? Or whatever. We just don't have any text surrounding that in that area in order for us to properly appropriate why it was being used, right? So you said Isaiah 18:4-5 is about weed. No, it's not. Ak Jimmy, I sent you the link. Why did you not click it yet? Shout out to Feed the Spirit. Shalom. Sent you the link, King. Click the link. Let's have a discussion. I know you hate Paul. That's cool. I know you're saying that there's weed smoke in Isaiah chapter 18, verses 4 and 5. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Okay, if you want to have a conversation about the mushroom and the cross, very familiar with that, you can click the link also and we can have a discussion on that. Malan Theos Zemuri, never seen you here before, but thank you for joining us. Let me see. Okay, what's the difference between the fiery furnace in Matthew 13:36-42 and the lowest hell in Deuteronomy 32:22? For fire is kindled in my anger and shall burn unto the lowest hell. So when you say it says shall burn unto the lowest hell, that is an idiom, but let's go ahead and unpack that. Let's go to Matthew chapter 13, verse 36 first. All right. So it says here, the parable of the weeds explained. Then he left the crowds and went unto the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, that's the key thing there, so will it be at the end of the age. So the weeds are the sons of the evil one. They will be gathered and burned with fire, which represents total annihilation or total destruction of the wicked. Okay. And when you see the process of winnowing wheat, right, and putting it through the process to turn it into bread, you'll understand what's going on. So that's why I have a actual video content on the Patreon called Bible Lands, right? And in that Bible Lands, it teaches you the process and shows you actual people in Israel making bread from scratch. It took hours to do. But anyway, it goes to say the Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers. I always bring this up to Christians all the time. So do you know that he's going to get rid of lawbreakers? You know, the same person you said makes you free from the law. Well, if you're breaking the law, they're going to get you up out of there and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's all in India. All right. Remember, go back to verse 40. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. That's what it's talking about. This is not talking about this concept of hell that we think about, that somebody's going to be tossed in there, we're going to be burning alive. We don't have that. We have the beast, the false prophet, and what we call, the Satan and his Melakim, his messengers. But it never says that regular people outside of the ones mentioned in the book of Revelation, etc., will be suffering that same fate. That's their fate. Everybody else will be destroyed with fire, who are lawbreakers and those who cause sin. The ones who are considered the weeds will be annihilated and destroyed. So this is what this fiery furnace. Remember, the furnace is designed to purify things that go through it. It can be designed to burn trash, or it can be designed and make it into ash, or it can be designed, if you put some gold, silver, or some other precious metal in there, it's designed when you heat it up, the impurities come to the surface so that they are wiped away until you have something that is pure gold. Okay. So let's go to the second scripture that you referenced, Aki, which is Deuteronomy 32 and 22. Okay, Deuteronomy 32 and 22. Let's get context. Verse 19. The Lord saw it and spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end will be, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faithfulness. They have made me jealous with what is no God. They have provoked me to anger with their idols. So I will make them jealous with those people who are no people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled by my anger, and it burns to the depths of Sheol, devours the earth and its increase, and sets on fire the foundation of the mountains. We see this as a purging by fire. Okay, we see this also in the book of Isaiah, where it talks about a purge by fire. So when it says to the depths of Sheol, Sheol has to do with the underworld, the place where the body goes and where the soul goes and waits until it is judged. Again, this has nothing to do with hell. That Christian concept of hell has nothing to do with that, because that concept did not exist during the time when this was being written. So when it says to the depths of Sheol, which means nothing can escape his wrath. Even in death, you will be judged and consumed by his wrath of indignation, righteous indignation. Because some people thought that when they died, they can escape the Creator. This is why the psalmist says, if I make my bed in hell or Sheol, behold, thou art there. Okay? So there will be destruction. The earth will be renovated by fire. And those who provoke him to anger, those who make other idols their power and break the commandment that says, do not put any other mighty ones before my face, they will be consummated and destroyed by fire, divine fire. So hopefully that begins to address that for you, my brother. Okay. All right. So JP says, isn't Sheol hell? No, it's not. So that word hell, that's not in the Bible. We have Hades, we have Gehenna, and we have Tartarus in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, you have other words, most notably Sheol. There's other words that mean grave, etc. But it depends on context. The concept of hell, you must define it. The closest thing you have is the story of Lazarus in Luke chapter 16. But that is an interpolation. I added that article that addresses that on the Patreon. It's an interpolation. It's a late edition. It does not read similar to everything else that is in that chapter in the next chapter, chapter 17. It stands out. Its style, the way it's written, its use of words, etc. is out of place. And where we see this same thing happen elsewhere, we know notably that is an interpolation. So hopefully that begins to answer that question. When you say hell, what do you mean when you say hell? Define hell when you say hell, when you says, isn't Sheol hell? Sheol is the grave or the underworld where souls go to await judgment. So when you say hell, what do you mean when you say hell? In Genesis 1:1 does atha. You mean it, mean covenant. No, it does not. It is a grammatical function that designates a direct object, right? It's called a direct object marker because what it does is that it notates that the nominative or the subject that is being mentioned that precedes it is acting directly on the accusative object that succeeds it. So precedes mean come before, succeeds mean come after. So here you have in Hebrew verb, subject, direct object, marker, and then you have the accusative or the object. That means there's no question. Whenever you see that, there is an emphasis that the subject is directly responsible for the verbal action being committed to the accusative. So in Genesis 1:1, it says, Bereshit bara Elohim. Bara Elohim. Elohim is the direct agent responsible. Et hashamayim ve'et eretz, or ha'eretz, the land. You say earth, that's more of a modern nomenclature, but nonetheless, it has nothing to do with nothing deep to mean alpha and omega, or to mean what people say. People say alpha, omega. They say aleph, tav. Has nothing to do with that. There's no doctrine about a covenant. There's no hidden mystery, esoteric. It is simply a grammatical function. That's like me looking at English, and I look at the hyphen, and I tell someone, "Oh, look at that dash. Let me tell you what that means." And somebody says, "Wait a second. That's just it's a part of grammar, English. It's nothing deep. Where you getting this knowledge from?" So there are Bibles that create a whole doctrine about it. No, it has nothing to do with anything extra. It's a direct object marker. Look it up. It's part of the grammar. It's not in English because English doesn't need that. Based on syntax and sentence structure, we can identify what is acting directly on the object. So yeah, that's what it is, and it's part of literature, right? Sometimes you have grammar like the consecutive wav. That's only shown in biblical Hebrew. You don't get it in modern Hebrew because depends on literature has features and functions that you don't get from colloquial speech, right? Same thing if you're looking at some English work from the past 400 years ago. There's functions in that literature that does not appear in the colloquial English of the day, right? That's just how language works, okay? All right. Shalom, true people of the Bible. I see you. Shalom. Back to black. Shalom, brother. I've been hearing the land Jerusalem is in southern Africa. Can you give any info on that? Have you heard of this? Yes, I've heard of this. Yes, I've addressed that here. People say it's in Kenya. People say it's in South Africa. I heard people say it's in the Congo. I heard people say that it is in Montana. I heard people say that it's in Peru. I heard people say that it's in Mexico. I heard people say that it's in East India. I heard people say all this stuff. The problem It's what's called material culture. You have to be able to find for me material culture that's mentioned in the Bible, all the items of material culture that's mentioned in the Bible in any other region of the world where people say, this is where it's at. I'll give you an example. What do you mean by material culture? Show me where the turtle doves emigrate into an area during the springtime and they're cooing. Show me where at the same time you have barley and wheat grow, spelt that grow in the same region. Show me that. Also show me the forms of storks that are in the coastal plains. Show me the Central Hill countryside. All of these features is mentioned in the text. So if you say it's another region, you got to show me all these other elements. So far, nobody's ever been able to do that because it's not in those areas. And they thought it was an easy win by saying that and using unscrupulous scriptures here and there. But when I get into the material culture, it's done. I mean, you can't get around it. Even direction, the word Negev means south. Even that term Negev messes them up. I said, where's the Negev desert? The South Desert. Where's that at in this area you're talking about? And then I give them other locations. Where's the Jordan River at? Where's that at? You got Jordan River, you got coastal plains, central countryside, you got valleys, you got that topography there. The lithosphere that we're dealing with of geography, you have that there. These animals that I mentioned, certain plants that grow in that region to begin specific plants. I gave you a great book on that, talking about the fauna and flora in the Bible. Fauna has to do with the remains of animals. Flora has to do with the remains of the plants. Or the flora and fauna is the plants and animals that is native to that region. Give you a whole book on that. It's on the Patreon. They got to address that. There's no way they can address any of that. It's not there. Now, did our people migrate to South Africa? Of course they did. Yes, they did. And if you go to their oral tradition, they don't even tell you that Israel is in South Africa. So who's these people that's come Johnny come latelys that don't have the oral tradition or have the haplogroup markers to even make the claims that the local groups that do make the claims tell you they migrated from Israel? So it does not help the argument. It does not work. There's just too much stuff you got to incorporate and mismash, and yeah, it's just not going to work. It's like a bowl of gumbo. There's a whole bunch of things thrown in there and telling somebody, look, it's good food. Like, hold on, it's a gumbo. Gumbo is never healthy. It'll fill your stomach, but it's not healthy. That's what you tell me. Give me some information. It's because it's information doesn't mean that it's healthy for my spiritual wellness. Yeah. So of our ancestors, Noah being born with albinism, that is something that is outside the text. So therefore, I would take that with a grain of salt. Okay. This is a later development that is outside the canon that came about, that is doubtful by a lot of scholars, because we can tell the language is late. So, I don't really hold to that. And again, if you look at the ancient Near East, albinism is something that was treated very differently by different cultures, but typically those individuals seen as outcasts. And a lot of times, if you create a myth around that individual, or a legend, I'm not going to say myth, a legend around an outcast who's an albino, typically they become some kind of hero, savior, etc. figure, right? So we see that was incorporated into extra biblical texts to kind of give more prevalence to Noah when it was not necessary. There's no need for you to do that. The text itself is very clear why Noah was special. Anything outside of that is secondary. All right. So even for me personally, I hold to a lot of First Enoch, the parts of it that can be parsed out to be older, antiquated oral traditions. I believe that they are authentic and that they can be canon, as we see in the Ethiopic text or Bible, what we call Bible, right? Later versions of it, Second Enoch, Third Enoch, is questionable. The Book of Jubilees is a great commentary on Genesis to part of Exodus, right? Give you great insight. I believe that is an ancient oral commentary on the text, and that is authentic as well. But any references to the skin color of Noah, We see it as an interpolation. It's a late rendition, and it's really something that you get really from Grecian culture, right? Because they have albinos even amongst Caucasian peoples. So albinism is not exclusive to people of color. All groups of people on this planet have albinos within their populace, right? So I try to veer away from that, right? All right. Shabbat Shalom, Aiden Elisha. Thank you for joining us. Leighton Vickers, you said Matthew 24 and 34. You must be a preterist. If you are a preterist, here, click the link here. All right. I have no problem dialoguing with some preterists. Do it all the time. It's a link right here. Okay. All right. Let me see. Shout out to Kayvon W. Smith. Shalom. What's going on, King? All right. So my brother's keeper 2X. Shalom. I observed the sunset to sunset Sabbath. But how do you explain Nehemiah 13:19? I don't know why people use it to explain the 24-hour Shabbat. All right. I'll address that real quick. I've done it on here before talking about the Shabbat, but I'll get it for you. You said Nehemiah 13 and 19. I'm very familiar with that. All right, let me get it. I'm explaining to you what's going on here. All right. So verse 15, in those days I saw in Judah people treading wine presses on the Shabbat and bringing in heaps of grain and loading them on donkeys, and also wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I warned them on the day when they sold food. Tyrians also, who lived in the city, brought in fish and all kinds of goods and sold them on the Shabbat to the people of Judah and Jerusalem itself. Then I confronted the nobles of Judah and said to them, what is this evil thing that you are doing, profaning the Sabbath? Remember I told you this word profane means to hollow out, halal, which means to make common, because this is what you do on every other day. So they're making the Sabbath a common day. And the Most High speaks against that. Verse 18, did not your fathers act in this way? And did not our God bring all this disaster on us and on this city? Now you are bringing more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath. Verse 19, as soon as it began to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Shabbat, I commanded that the doors be shut and gave orders that they should not be opened until after the Shabbat. So let's address that. This is not saying that the Shabbat is a 24-hour period. And again, let me backtrack. The Shabbat is a 24-hour period, right? It designates the seventh reckoning of time within a week schedule of days in an Israelite method of observing time. Okay, so the Shabbat marks the seventh day that incorporates our Shabbaton. Shabbaton, the on, anytime you hear on, your cholam, nun, your on is a diminutive, which is a smaller, endearing version of something. The Shabbaton on the Shabbat is the period of time within that seventh day period called the Shabbat, in which one rests. And that period of time, according to Exodus 16, is when the sun cracks in the sky from sunrise to about 3 p.m. And from 3 p.m., it cascades out until sunset. Exodus 16 deals with that. The reason why you see Nehemiah doing what he's doing in Nehemiah 13 and 19, and again, I have some great text for you to read on Second Temple Judaism, which is being formulated now. They are doing what we call legalism, which is excessive adherence to the law. So what he decided to do was, since people are profaning the Sabbath day, key word, the Sabbath day, since they're profaning that period of time, what I'm going to do is that when the sun sets, well, we would say Friday night, right? When the sun sets, we're going to close the gate. Why? Because those travelers that come and do their sales will have to wait until after the sun sets. And even then, they're not going to sell anything at night. More than likely, they'll wait to the next day, which is what we call Sunday today, colloquially speaking, according to the Gregorian calendar, right? However, they are adding an additional provision or measure to prevent people from selling on the Shabbat. That's why we see it said that as it began to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Shabbat, I commanded that the doors should be shut and gave orders that they should not be opened until after the Shabbat. And I stationed some of my servants at the gate that no load might be brought in on the Sabbath day. So remember, the Sabbath day is distinguished from the Shabbat. And then you have a period of time that says grow dark, which is that twilight period. When it begins to grow dark is during nautical twilight into astronomical twilight. That's what he's talking about. That's the time period in which the gate was shut. So it prevents people from coming in. Typically what they would do, they would come before the evening. They would rest. These foreigners would come in at night, find a place to lodge, rest, and then they would wake up when the sun rises, and then they would go out to sell within the gates of Jerusalem. Nehemiah sort of said, wait a second. No, we got to put an additional provision saying we're going to close the gates the evening before the Shabbat comes in to prevent them from coming in, lodging, and for them to wake up and start selling when the daylight hits. Okay? So hopefully that addresses that question for you right there. All right? Okay. Let me stop this. Let's close this. All right. So far, nobody's clicking the link that I've invited. Shout out to Noelia. Shalom. JP, shalom. All right. So, JP, I mentioned this earlier. What is your take on brothers accepting Mormon books and sealed portion, etc.? They claim they are our books. What are your views on this? They are not our books. I mentioned earlier, ask those brothers if they read The Pearl of Great Price and Doctrines and Covenants. If they have not read those books, they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to the Book of Mormon. Matter of fact, let me show y'all something real quick. If you want to read all this Book of Mormon stuff, I'm going to show you can get it for free. All right? Let me show it to y'all real quick. Here's an app right here. It's called Gospel Library, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's AKA Mormons. Install that. Read for yourself the Book of Mormon, the Pearl of Great Price, Doctrines and Covenants, and all the other literature written by elders within the church. And then tell them to come back and let me know if they still believe this is our book. That's important. Reading is fundamental. Okay? Can't get no more fundamental than looking at the actual Gospel Library of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ask them if Joseph Smith was an Israelite. I want to know that. So let me know if he was an Israelite. I'd like to know. All right, so Kalfani Powell says, peace and blessings to you and yours, Brother Ron. I have a question. What do you think of Shem Tov's Hebrew version of Matthew? Have you read it, and do you think it's legit? Yes, I've read his book of Matthew, but this is the thing. Research Shem Tov's, what we call Hebrew version. Did you know that that version of Matthew is contained within a greater work? It is not a standalone book or work on its own. And it was done as a polemic against Christians. So it's biased, and it has an agenda and propaganda behind it. Now, there are some archaisms in it that go back to the 1st century CE. So whoever wrote that was very skilled with Hebrew, and they did remember some archaisms, and they included in the text. Awesome. But it's not consistent throughout the text. That's how we know that whoever wrote this did have some familiarity of some older scrolls. However, in putting the rest of the story together, they're pulling from other sources in order to do that. And their uses of Hebrew is also contemporary to the time period in which the Shem Tov was actually laid down in the text. Right? So I could go do it piece by piece, bit by bit, but I would implore you to read the entire work that Shem Tov's Hebrew version of Matthew is contained within. If you really want to get down to the nitty gritty about the quote unquote Hebrew or Aramaic, really Aramaic version of Matthew, you have to go to the old Syriac Sinaiticus Palimpsest manuscript, and you got to read the Hebrew, not the Hebrew, excuse me, you got to read the Syriac of the Matthew portion in there. And then you got to go to several church fathers, such as Jerome, who have quoted from the text and used that as textual criticism to match against what you read in that old Syriac Sinaiticus Palimpsest. And then there's other what we call marginal notes in Jerusalem manuscripts of the Gospels, especially particularly the book of Matthew, that have various notes that say in the Hebrew version it says this, in the Hebrew version it says that. I have a whole lecture where I touch on that, and then I have books that I've shown y'all on here before that also delve into that. Let me show you one of them. All right, is this one right here? The Gospel According to the Hebrews and the Gospel of the Ebionites, edited by Andrew Gregory, is a very objective book in regards to dealing with that text. It attempts to deal with the authenticity of the text, the history of the text, and it cross-examines the quotations of it and the references made by it by the Ante-Nicene Church Fathers. Okay, so you don't need the Shem Tov Hebrew. Again, it is not an authentic version of Matthew, even though it contains some what we call archaisms or archaic forms, words, and usages of first century CE, but is not the work itself is inconsistent in regards of its style. So we know that it is not something that is old in what we call antiquated scroll. It didn't come from some antiquated scroll or from some codex. It didn't come from that, right? So go back and research that. All right. All right. So hopefully that helps with that. Okay. So shout out to Jermaine Howell. Shalom. Is it fair to say that the Day of Atonement falls on a weekly Shabbat because it is a Shabbaton? None of the other holy days are called Shabbaton. All right. Excellent question. I want to deal with that because I want to show you that. And no, it doesn't necessarily mean that it falls on that day. Matter of fact, calendrical systems such as Hillel II is designed so that atonement does not fall on the Shabbat, right? But let's get into the text real quick, right? So we can address that. Let's go to Leviticus. Okay, Leviticus 23. Okay, jump down. Okay, Day of Atonement, right? It says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, now on the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be for you a time of holy convocation, and you shall afflict yourselves and present a food offering to Yod-Heh-Wafe. And you shall not do any work on that very day, for it is a day of atonement to make atonement for you before Yod-Heh-Wafe Eloheka. For whoever is not afflicted on that very day shall be cut off from his people, and whoever does any work on that very day, that person I will destroy from among his people. You shall not do any work. It is a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwelling places. It shall be to you a Shabbat of solemn rest. It's not saying that it falls on a Shabbat, even though it very well can be, right? If we want to look at the ancient record in the time in regards to it before changes were made so it doesn't fall on a Shabbat, right? It says it shall be a Shabbat. It shall be like a Shabbaton, and you shall afflict yourself on the 9th day of the month, beginning that evening, and from evening to evening shall you keep your Shabbat. So every time you see Shabbat, it does not automatically mean it's the weekly Shabbat. The weekly Shabbat is addressed at the beginning of this chapter. Here, when it says it shall be a Shabbat to you, let's go ahead and look into the verbiage there. All right. Excellent point, by the way, right? Excellent point, right? Let's go to 32. Let's go here. So you don't just think I'm just making this up. We're gonna look at it ourselves. And it says Shabbaton. Hu lachem we'in nitem, right? It nafsotechem, right? For your souls. His root word is nefesh, right? Let me just highlight it. Root word is nefesh. Nun pe shin, nefesh, your souls, right? Your chem is your suffix indicator of second person masculine plural. Your souls, okay? So this Shabbaton. So a Shabbaton is a period of rest that happens typically on the Sabbath day. So what it's saying to you is that it shall be like a Shabbaton to you, meaning that from evening to evening, you are to rest. And the reason why it's specific about evening to evening is because it is distinct from any other day where it deals with evening to evening. Me'ereb ad ereb. Very different. So instead of that period of time, which is the daylight where you rest, you're resting the entire sunset to sunset on this day of what we call atonement, where you shall afflict your nefesh. You're doing it. You are afflicting it. You see this et here? There's nothing secretive about it. It's aleph tav. There's not no covenant, nothing deep about it. It's a direct object marker, right? That tells you you are responsible for performing that action on your own soul, not the Most High, not nobody else. You are. That's why it's in the second person, masculine plural, meaning you all, plural to you, because you know you can be singular, plural English. You all, I say that to distinguish between you singular and you plural. You all shall afflict y'all souls. That's your job to do that. And it's an intensive action, the PL stem, intensively doing it to your own soul. So that evening to evening, from sunset to sunset, you're going to rest that entire time and afflict your soul that entire time, as opposed to the regular weekly Shabbat, where the Shabbaton is during the period of day where there's light, from sunrise to sunset, or what we would call a business day in the ancient Near East. Okay? Or, excuse me, business day consisting of business hours. Here in America is 9 to 5. Back then, it's from sunrise to sunset. All right? All right. Shout out to Yeti Ibri Dre. Shalom. Let's see. Facts, here the elect. I agree with you. Facts, King. All right. Would you say biblical days begin at dawn? It depends on the context, right? So technically, a biblical business day begins at dawn, right? But the reckoning of time for the entire day begins at evening. But because most actions commence during the day portion, that's used to count the days, but it's only a portion of the full, what we call 24-hour day. In their time period, 24 hours didn't make sense to them. They didn't have that minute reckoning of time. It was from empirical observation using sundials to determine their period of time, which means just like in any temperate region, you don't literally have 24 hours of every day. You don't have that. And when I say you don't have that, relatively speaking, absolutely speaking, you do, because it's something that's set abstractly, and that's the way time is reckoned. However, in the ancient time, they use empirical observation. Empirical means using your 5 senses to determine something. And in this case, they was measure the amount of time. You have what's called sundials. Sundials existed in scripture. Let me give you a reference to a sundial in scripture. Let me show it to you. All right. Go to Isaiah chapter 38 and verse 8. I'm going to start at verse 4. Then the word, start at verse 1 for those who are not familiar with this story. In those days, Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came to him and said to him, thus said Yod-Heh-Wafe, set your house in order, for you shall die, you shall not recover. Then Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to Yod-Heh-Wafe and said, please, O Yod-Heh-Wafe, remember how I have walked before you in faithfulness and with a whole heart, and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah, go and say to Hezekiah, thus says Yod-Heh-Wafe, the power of David your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Behold, I will add 15 years to your life. I will deliver you and this city out of the hand of the king of Syria, and will defend this city. Verse 7. This shall be the sign to you from Yod-Heh-Wafe, that Yod-Heh-Wafe will do this thing that he has promised. Behold, I will make the shadow cast by the declining sun on the dial of Ahaz turn back 10 steps. So the sun turned back on the dial the 10 steps by which it had declined. When you understand how a sundial works, it is a circle with a stick placed in the middle of it, and markings are made. And what happens is, as the sun goes over the sky in a dome-shaped fashion, it casts a shadow. Well, it doesn't cast a shadow, but it shines light on the stick, which then casts a shadow on each one of those markers as the day progresses. So in this case, the day should be going forward, but in his case, it went back and then it went forward. And that was the sign to let him know that the Most High was going to fulfill his promise to Hezekiah. That is an example of a sundial found in Scripture. That is called relative dating and is a means of dating time using your environment. Today, we use a clock. That's how we do it. Back then, they didn't have that. Today, we use minutes and seconds. They didn't have that. So they use their environment to determine time. So they didn't have a perfect, what we call perfect 24-hour period. Is whenever the sun set to when the sun set again, or when the sun rise to sunset during the business day, it fluctuated based on the time of year it was. All right. And it also throughout the world is relative to your location to what we call the equator. Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's see if there's anything else. Shout out to Warfare Rebirth of a Nation in the building. Shalom. Rashad, the G Brew, shalom. I see you. Judas Redemption, shalom. Tracy H, shalom. All right. Let me see. Shout out to Lioness of Israel, shalom. Junea, Klinya, shalom. Yawasap Yasharala, shalom. Sister Santawan, shalom. Native Village Construction Group, shalom. Okay. Shout out to Sister Monica Williams, V Brand, what's going on, King? Shalom. Truth, more truth, shalom. Raphael, shalom. Let's see. 876 Benjamin Israel, shalom. James McKenzie, shalom. All right, let me see. Any other questions? I'm going through. I might be overlooking some things, but any other questions before we tap out early? Shout out to Ardale for Hope in the building. Shalom, King. What's going on the West Coast? Chris Will, shalom. Chris Will, we dealt with tattoos before. Just go to YouTube, type tattoos, put Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, and you'll see us touching on tattoos. Also, this resource here that I recommend for everybody to get called the Cultural Background Study Bible. It has a footnote on tattoos. Okay. All right. All right. So V Brand says, how do you know what Yah is saying to you? How do you know that word yada? How do I know what he's saying to me? It must be in alignment with something that he has already said. So a precedent was already set with the text. So whatever said to me today has to be in accordance with what the text says, what was laid out by the ancestors who had a direct experience with them in the land. Okay. So my experience cannot drastically divert from what we see in the text. If so, that may not be him talking to me. That could definitely be something totally other than, but typically it would be congruent with what we see in the text. All right. So That's one way that I can confirm that it is him talking to me, especially when I do other practices or customs that put me in direct covenant with him that was done by the people in the book. All right. All right. So Seal the Elect says, Divine, yo, about that book. It's an NIV Bible. Can we trust that version? Yes, you can. It is called a dynamic equivalency translation. And a lot of it is based off of older manuscript evidence. Okay. The KJV is what we called a formal equivalency translation. You're going to ask, what's the difference between the two? Well, a formal equivalency translation, and several texts like this ESV that you see me use a lot of time, is considered a formal equivalency translation. The attempt of the translators or the translational theory is to try and make the translation as slavish to the original text as possible, which means they attempt a word-to-word translation as much as possible. You can't do it exact because the syntax and the word order for grammar of Hebrew is much different from English. So there are limitations with that. A dynamic equivalency translation, on the other hand, the translational theory or the translator's approach is to translate it as much thought for thought as possible. In some cases, they do word for word, but places where it's difficult, they do thought for thought because they examine the thought form used at that time period, find an equivalent thought today, and marry them up so that way it's more readable to a contemporary English speaker today. And also, the NIV has footnotes, and we can also measure it against the manuscripts that it has translated from. So again, it reads differently. It's not as loose as the NLT. The NLT is extremely loose. I don't deal with the NLT. Sometimes I may use it for people who really don't understand the text at all, but I try to stay away from it. The most dynamic I get is the NIV. The most stringent I get would be the ESV, right? But I use them both to kind of see how certain texts are translated. I'll parse the text out myself, do my own translation, what I call a slavish translation or interlinear translation, and then I'll look at that and try to translate it as loose as I can in English, so that way if I'm conveying it to somebody, they can understand it. So again, the NIV is not a untrustworthy version. Some people will say, oh, look, they took stuff out. They didn't take nothing out. What happens is the manuscript that they're relying upon, which is older than the manuscripts used for the King James Version, which comes from the majority text type, which comes from the Byzantine text type family, which comes about much later, has a lot of textual variants and interpolations that we don't find in the earliest manuscripts, more particularly represented by the Alexandrian text type. You also have the Western text type, which is the Latin text. Okay, so that's very important that when you do textual analysis and textual criticism on the text and you're parsing out things, you see how some translations lean on certain manuscript families for their translation. It doesn't mean they're leaving things out. It means the manuscript that they're using does not have that. And we have several instances where interpolations are known in what we call the King James Version. We see them. For example, Mark, the last chapter of the book of Mark, chapter verses 9 and on, is a replete interpolation. John chapter 7, verse 58, all the way through that story of the woman caught in adultery, is a complete interpolation. First John chapter 5, verse 7 is a complete interpolation. These are things that are well-known interpolations that's found because they are in later manuscripts. The early manuscripts do not have them. Even the word new in Matthew chapter 24, this is the covenant. This is my blood of the new covenant. That new there comes from later manuscripts. Early manuscripts don't even have new in it. It just says the blood of my covenant, which is consistent with a covenant meal between a superior and his inferiors, or a superior or a master and his students, his disciples. We see the same thing occur of a covenant meal between Melchizedek and Abraham. All right. So hopefully that answers that. Again, I'm not taking shots at anybody's preferred translation. If that's your translation, rock with it. If that's the thing that's going to bring you salvation, all praise to the Most High for that. If that's what's waking you up, fine. However, when you ask questions, I'm just going to be honest about them, and I'm going to explain it to you. Just because something later doesn't mean it's bad. It could have been an oral tradition that then found its way in the written text. And that oral tradition can be just as old as the 1st century CE. So there's arguments that can be made for a lot of those interpolations that we find in later editions of the text, right? And when I say text, I mean manuscripts, not the translations. Translations only mirror what's in the manuscripts, all right? Reggie Phillip, yes. She's called the Queen of Heaven because she's the mother of God. Theotokos. She's the mother of God, according to certain religious circles, because she gave birth to Jesus. And she came about through what's called the Immaculate Conception. And she had to be immaculately conceived to be purged of sin in order for her to give birth to the sinless God-man. So she's equated as the Queen of Heaven. Now, remember, in the scriptures, Old Testament, right, Book of Jeremiah, we see the Queen of Heaven mentioned. That's not the same entity. Totally different entity. One deals with Babylon. The Theotokos that we see that's mentioned about Mary, the mother of God, that's something totally separate and is a much later application, okay? But she's considered the mother of God because she gave birth to God, Jesus Christ. Now, do I subscribe to that? Of course not. However, that's the doctrine of Theotokos. I'll put it in here so you can see what I'm talking about. Those of you who are not familiar with the term, look it up, all right? If you look it up, your research, and you'll see what the Theotokos, the mother of God, that's what they say. I have a lot of problems with that. God don't have a mother. And when we say God, what God are we talking about? God the Son, second person of the triune Godhead, who shares the same essence and nature as the Father and the Spirit, who's also co-equal and co-eternal to the Father and the Spirit. Okay. That's the doctrine. Look it up. So, Yeti Ibri Dre, excellent question. I mentioned this before in here, but I'll hook you up again, my brother. It's called the Paragraph Bible. I have it here somewhere. It might be over there. I have it somewhere. I got books everywhere, so I don't know. I've been reading books in every room in the house or whatever. I don't have books all over the place. But let me pull it up for you on Amazon. So if you're interested, you can get it. All right. Now, if you want the one with the Apocrypha, it's going to cost you some change, but it's worth it. All right. I'm going to drop the link here in the chat for you. There's the link. Hopefully that comes through. Yeah, I think it broke up. So let me do this. Hold on. Matter of fact, I'll just share let me just share the screen so you can see it. You can see what it looks like. Here it is right here. There it is right here. The New Cambridge Paragraph Bible, King James Version with Apocrypha, edited by David Norton. If you like the King James, this is the only King James Bible that I would recommend. You're going to say, why? Because it contains a lot of the notes from the original translators. And the editors or redactors of this Bible have made corrections to typeist errors and other errors that has been noted and acknowledged by the translators in subsequent revisions. And it also contains the beloved Apocrypha. So this is the one I would recommend. They also have concise versions or abridged versions that's smaller. Like the one I have is the one without the Apocrypha. But if you want the Apocrypha, this is the best King James Version Bible that you can buy. That's my opinion. And it's heavily supported in the realms of academia as well. All right. So if you love the King James Version Bible, which I like the King James Version, don't get me wrong. It is not my preferred version, but that don't mean I don't like it. It's very poetic style-wise. It is very readable. It's easy to remember. I mean, it's a great translation, but it is dated. It is old. It does have some issues. And therefore, more modern translations attempt to correct or work upon that. Okay. But there it is right there. If you want the clickable link for it, let me get it. I could give you a clickable link. Give me 1 second. All right. I'm going to drop that in the chat. There you go. Okay. So the sister asks, Nisi's Pieces, Shalom, Nisi's Pieces. You asked, what is your preferred version? Well, a lot of y'all know that I use the ESV a lot. However, my preferred, well, I'll say the ESV is my preferred. I'll just leave it at that. ESV is my preferred version. However, it is not my primary version. My primary version is going back to the original manuscripts as much as possible. And you can see these online, or you can get a book that has them. I have 2 of them. One of them is on the Patreon. Or you can get an interlinear, which is my favorite Bible, which you see me use a lot, is an interlinear, right? And it would be these books here in my hand, right? The Hebrew English interlinear ESV Old Testament and the Greek English interlinear ESV New Testament. This is my preferred Bibles, right? As far as translation goes, this one is based on the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. This one is based on a Nestle Aland Novum Testamentum Greece. Okay. And those are the standard manuscripts that's used in academia and which translations are measured against. All right. So these are the Bibles that I use in conjunction with the Cultural Background Study Bible because of its notes in regards to the ancient Near East. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. And I did a whole video on it, actually, on this channel. You go check the channel out when I answer a question when people ask me, what do I use to study the Bible? And I mentioned these resources, okay? So hopefully I answered your question, sis. Ma shlomcha arat tazah yasharala tov. I'm good. What about you, my brother? All right, so you asked about the Sefer. Now, I'm not a fan of the Sefer. I used to be before I did research on it. I used to be back in 2013, 2014. I stopped using it in 2015. Not that it's a bad translation. It's just not the best translation. It's better translations than that. Sefer is good because it restores names and tries to restore place names as well as personal names and stuff like that, the name of the creator, etc. So it's not a bad translation. However, there are parts of it that fall short, and I would have to do a whole session on that. So I should probably reserve that for another time. But if it's something that you like, that's great. So it's a decent translation, but another one of my favorite translations, at least of what we call the Torah or the Chumash, is the mechanical translation by Jeff Benner. I love that That's an excellent translation. It's called the mechanical translation of the Torah by Jeff Benner. Excellent translation. He did an excellent job with that. He's not identified as a scholar in academia, so that's why I don't cite him a lot, but he helped me along this journey, and a lot of his works, Jeff Benner, a lot of his works got me to where I'm at today, in conjunction with everything else I learned in academia, but a lot of his work started me out with a lot of insight that I probably wouldn't have had I not read his material. All right. So have you ever broken down the God, the mother doctrine? What do you mean? The Theotokos that I just mentioned? Is that what you're referring to? I'm assuming that's what you mean. So Kayvon W. Smith, did our ancestors in the Old Testament believe in an afterlife? Yes, they did. So let me start you off first with that in the book of Job. Let's go to Job chapter 19. And it develops over time. And again, I have a book on the afterlife on the Patreon. Matter of fact, let me find that as well. I'll drop the link in the chat. You can jump on the Patreon and read that on your own time. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let me look for it. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Let's do a search. And I'll get it for you. All right. So there's a couple of books. One book is called A History of Death in the Hebrew Bible. Okay. Which talks about post-mortem existence. Okay. And it says it was rooted in mortuary practices and conceptualized through the embodiment of the dead. So I'm going to give you that book. That's a heavy read. Excellent work. I'm going to give that to you. You can read that over the weekend if you like. Here's the link right here. All right. And let me give you a follow-up book to read on the subject matter of the afterlife. And again, I addressed it on here before. I went into various scriptures and I showed you the development of it. This other one is called Dust or Dew, Immortality in the Ancient Near East and in Psalm 49. Let me drop that book in there for you. Okay, here you go. That's your second book. Again, sign up for the Patreon. All this stuff is on the Patreon. All right. That one's by Janet Smith. And I think the last one is called Resurrection, Hell, and the Afterlife, Body and Soul in Antiquity, Judaism, and Early Christianity by Mark T. Finney. And that's a Routledge publishing work. Okay. So let me drop that third book in here for you. Third work in here for you. Here you go. There you go. Read up on that, consume that, and trust me, you will love it. All right. Yes, Yeti Ibri Dre. Actually, there's two brothers on Clubhouse that teach that doctrine. Yes, it comes from the World Mission Society Church in Christ, which is a Far East Korean church. But yes, that doctrine is unfounded in the text. Unfounded. All right. Unfounded. So would one be unclean on Saturday morning if they had intercourse on Friday evening or night? Technically, if you do have intercourse, you're unclean until the following evening. So you would be unclean on the Shabbat. However, certain things like that, there's nothing specific saying that that form of uncleanliness is a violation of the Shabbat. For example, a nida, a woman is considered unclean. Well, some nidas occur through the Shabbat. Does that mean that she's violating Torah? No, that's not the case, right? So there's different types of uncleanliness, different categories of uncleanliness. Some of them is a stark violation of Torah. Other ones are things that just happen naturally that is permissible, right? And you mentioned one which is being unclean through intercourse with a spouse, and the other one is a woman on her nida. All right, these are things that are just natural occurrences, so there's no violation for that. Hopefully that addresses that for you. And you mentioned some great scriptures, Isaiah 58:13, Jubilees 56-8, do hint at these things, but they're not specifically saying that on the Shabbat morning it's considered a violation if you're unclean by means of intercourse and or your nida. Okay. All right. Shout out to my brother Andre Waverez in the building. Canada in the building. What's going on, bro? Okay, anytime, Kayvon. Thank you for signing up. Hopefully you appreciate the content on there. Thank you so much for your support. So the doctrine of regression, right? Let me type this in the chat. All right. Let me see if I can pull something up for you guys real quick. Come on. Let me send this to you real quick. Here's this link right here for you. Truth and More Truth. Hopefully it's clickable. Yes, it should be clickable. Click that link and go ahead and look into that. There it is right there. All right, so click onto that Truth, More Truth. So you can look into that. But yes, people talk about a past life. A lot of that comes from what we call Far Eastern doctrine that comes from what we call Hinduism or forms of Hinduism. I went into the Vedas before with a sister on Clubhouse talking about regression, talking about past lives, reincarnation, and so forth. That is not biblical. It's not biblical. And I sent you a link. You can take a look at it. A great article written by, what's the guy's name again? I forget his name. Written by Dr. James Paul Pandarkarian, and he is, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that he is a Hindu Christian scholar. Okay, I read another work that he did before on Hinduism, if I'm not mistaken. Let's pull him up real quick. Let me confirm that. I had to go find that article from my repertoire. Let me see if I can find him. See if I can find him. Let me see if I can get his some background on him so you can see. But yeah, he wrote on this, dealing with that. He did an excellent job in that article that I shared with you. Let me see. Can't find it. That's weird. But I'll look for it. I'll share it with you. Email me and I'll share it with you so you can have that. So I always like to help y'all vet any authors that we use on here. All right. So sister light to the nation. Shalom. Shalom to you, sis. Are mitras or mitris custom dressed? It was for priests and nobles typically. Some men did not cover their head unless they had those roles or positions. But it was a dress that was used in the past, not just by ancient Israel, but also by other cultures as well. Babylonians used it as well in other cultures. So it's not exclusive to the Bible. When we see it mentioned, it's typically a headdress of priests. Okay. Okay, so you asked me about sodomy, right? All right. So sodomy, if you do a search for this word sodomy, it's important, right? Let me show this to you. I want you to see this. You're asking some real questions tonight. If you look up this word sodomy, right, you'll be kind of far-fetched to find that word sodomy. Now, if you have a verse with sodomy in it, share with me. All right, share that verse sodomy with me. What verse are you extracting that from? But if you go to do a search for it to look it up, you're not going to see it. But definitely give me a verse that you may come across or have that mentions that term so we can address it. Let's see. Shout out to the Messiah Kobe. Shalom. I see you. My brother Kai Ayala. Excuse me. Shalom King. What's going on? That's true. Facts. If HK doesn't subscribe to the 12 chart, how do you determine Hebrew Israelite lineage? I don't know what you mean by HK. War Ya'ala ban Yasharala. I'm not sure what you mean by that. What is HK? I appreciate that, King. So are body piercing or facial piercings kosher? Typically piercings of the nose and the ears, with the exception of the awl that's driven through the ear of a servant who wants to indefinitely become a master servant forever. An awl, AWL, you see that mentioned in scripture, was mostly done by women. Women did pierce their nose, they did pierce their ears. So facial piercings, as far as the nose, body piercings, that's not described in the scripture. Like, people pierce their nipples, they pierce other private parts, pierce the skin. That's not, you say kosher, that's not scriptural. That wasn't part of their custom. Now, if you want to see a people group that did that, the Assyrians did that. The Persians heavily did that. The Medes did that. That was part of their culture to do a lot of those body piercings. But you'd be hard pressed to find that in Israelite culture. All right, with the exception of nose piercings that women did have that we see in scripture. Okay. Oh, you say okay. So HK, KH, you mean Kingdom Harbinger. Okay. So you're talking about Kingdom Harbinger in regards to the teaching doctrine of Kingdom Harbinger. All right. Which is distinct from the community part of the organization. All right. So you don't need the 12 tribes chart to determine Hebrew Israelite lineage. As I was speaking to Melissa on last Friday, with some of the evidence, and again, if you want to see the rest, just sign up for the Patreon. You'll see all the primary sources I use in regards to Black Jews and their migrations from Israel all throughout West and Central Africa and South Africa, actually, right? So the most important thing is when you see the location of these Black Jews and all the regions and where slaves were sourced from, and you learn that the slave raiding tactics of the indigenous peoples of those areas was to take the foreigners from amongst them and trade them for other items from the Europeans. That's what they did. You have Black Jews identified by locals in their region, and then that entire community of Black Jews disappeared after the transatlantic slave trade. So some theories on that is that a good portion of them made their way over here to the Americas, and a substantial amount of them they withdrew from openly identifying as a Black Jew because they looked very similar to their neighbors, and they became crypto Jews, which means they practiced their culture behind closed doors, but openly they adopted the indigenous culture of the peoples, or if they was in regions where Islam was there, they adopted Islam. And Janice Levy, she wrote a great article on that you can find on the Patreon. Excellent article she wrote on that about the crypto Jews. All right. So that's how you can find your lineage. So if your ancestors came from one of these slave ports where these Black Jews were noted to have lived or was identified, and we know the slave raiding tactics of the indigenous peoples in that region was to get the foreigners first and then ship them. And the first wave, I would say the first and second wave that came over here was all foreigners amongst those indigenous places, and most of them was those Black Jews. And then they would start going into the hinterlands, having battles with other tribes, and then taking prisoners of wars, and then forcing them into the trade. That came on the latter wave. And then over here in the Americas, especially specifically North America, you had these domestic breeding stations. I have books on what we call intercontinental slave breeding post. That's on the Patreon, which then mingled those Black Jews with those indigenous peoples on that latter wave and mixed them in together. So if you want to get more specific, there's oral traditions from various Black Jews in those regions today that tell you what tribes they come from of ancient Israel. So there's various means that we can utilize in order to determine our Hebrew Israelite lineage. I don't even like that term, Hebrew Israelite, our Israelite lineage through oral tradition, migrations, the location, geography of where these people were at, the Hebraisms that came with them, the crypto Jews and the records of crypto Jews that has been discovered, some of them found amongst the manuscripts and the works of Timbuktu. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you a name. I'm going to give you a name so you can go do your research. All right. Here's a great example of what we talk about crypto Jews. And if that's not on the Patreon, I don't know if I put that on the Patreon. Let me see. Did I add that to the Patreon? Because I have tons of articles on him. No. So I'm gonna add that to the Patreon by next week. I want you to look up Ishmael Dia Haidara. Look up his history. He was a scholar that was assigned to the Timbuktu Library. And in the process of going through the Timbuktu Library and preserving them and categorizing them, etc., he found a record of his own family, and they were caravan Jews in Mali. And what happened was, because of Mohammedanism or Islam, they became crypto Jews, which means they practiced their culture at home, but outwardly they were Muslims. Evidence is right there. Anytime Aratasai, you're going to love that. I know you're going to love that. All right. Yes, Ladinos in that history of the Iberian Peninsula and the Sephardic Jews, all right, that spoke what we say a form of Spanish and Hebrew. That will help to give you your Ladino. Okay. All right. So I'm still internal KO 11. Shalom. Yeah, I was waiting on that scripture for the sodomy thing. I was waiting on that scripture for that. You're giving me Deuteronomy 23 and 17. I want to know. Shout out to Finding the Shama. Shalom. Hopefully you're enjoying that laptop. Zedek Yehuda. Why do you think the camp stay away from biblical Hebrew? Not all camps. A majority of them do, but some of them don't. Some of them get into the language, right? But that's because Lashwan Kadash cannot be authenticated with biblical Hebrew material. That's why, in academia. So a lot of times they shy away from it because the Hebrew that they're using is not represented in the scholarly works and resources that they may refer to or other people may refer to. That's why I would say that. And some of them think biblical Hebrew is actually Yiddish, and that is wholeheartedly incorrect. It's not correct. Yiddish is German, and it uses Hebrew letters to convey a German dialect. That's not the same thing as biblical Hebrew. It's two totally different languages. All right, they use the same characters, but they're two totally different languages using the same characters. The same way that Romance languages use the Latin script, but they're all different languages. English uses the Latin script. It's not Latin. It's not Spanish. It's not French. They just use a similar script. Somebody can't tell me that English is French. It's not true. Just because they use the same script does that make them the same language, right? So it's different. Kayvon is saying that. Oh shoot. Okay, hold on. Let me take care of that right now. Thank you for the heads up. Let me see what's going on there. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna fix that right now. Give me a second. Thank you for the heads up, my brother. Let me fix that right now. All right, I'm fixing it right now. Give me a second. All right, here we go. All right, so it should be good now. So click on that and confirm for me that it's working for you. Let me make sure it's working for you. Shout out to Linda Ricks in the building. Shalom, I see you. So let's go there. Deuteronomy 23 and 7. 23 and what was that? 23 and 17. None of your daughters of Israel shall be a coat prostitute, and none of the sons of Israel shall be a coat prostitute. Yeah. So you're saying, are you referring to sodomy in regards to that? That word sodomy is not used there. And sodomy, as you know, has to do with anal sex between men, and that is what it's coined. And that's a later development that's outside the Bible. But the cult prostitutes were both male and female. Okay. So these were really ritualistic acts tied to a shrine or a temple cult. This was not like stuff that laymen would do. This is stuff that's tied to an actual cult, a ritual, right? This act was ritualistic. All right. So hopefully that's helping you out there. Hey, Mother Fields in the building. What's going on, Miss Leslie? Check it in to give a thumbs up and shalom. Shalom to you as well. Oh, okay. That book 2 needs to be corrected. All right, so let's go ahead and fix that. No problem. Let's do some customer service work. All right. Let's fix that. All right, give me a second. Don't know why that happened for these books, but let me correct that real quick while we are live. All right, so let me do it here. Give me a second. All right, fixed. All right, so yep, that's done. That's done, Kayvon. You good. Shout out to Yahu Ben Dora in the building. Shalom, Yisha Moore. What's going on, King? Shalom. Long time no speak. I pray everything is well with you. All right. Facts. Facts, Ben Yehuda. Facts. That is absolutely true. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, people gotta look into that. I gotta research that, man. And that's correct, Jeremiah. That's absolutely correct. All right. Okay, so shout out to Raise the Matrix 7 in the building. Shalom, what's going on? All right, so Eliyahu Yisrael, I see you. Shalom, shalom. Light of the Olive, shalom. What's your Patreon? What's your position on the second Exodus? When you say second Exodus, are you talking about us getting up out of here? I've shared that on a previous live stream, but what I'm going to do tonight, since we did hit the 2-hour mark early, and I answered as many questions as I can, covered as much as I can, I'm going to close out for tonight, since it is kind of early for me during this time period. Who developed the Yiddish language? It wasn't no one person. these were Ashkenazi Jews, okay, that migrated to Europe, kept the Hebrew, some Hebrew that they knew, adopted what we call German, and intertwined. That's why even in Yiddish, you do have some Hebrew in Yiddish. But those are like loan words and transliterated words and stuff like that. But for the most part, it is a German dialect. But they use the Hebrew letters. So the Ashkenazi use that most extensively, all right, in Eastern Europe. Okay. All right. So I don't know. You said also are collab a possibility with other Israelite? Are you saying, am I open to a collaboration with other Israelite content creators? Of course. Yes. If you or somebody else you know is an Israelite content creator, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com and let's work together. Yes, I'm definitely down for that. Shout out to Jace Fearson in the building. Shalom, King, what's going on? Good night to you as well. Leila Tov, Eternal KO. We're about to close out. All right. Let me see this last question. A Pop the Carry Custom. Can you briefly explain Exodus 12:43-51 in regards to who the strangers are? Brother tried telling me the strangers were Israelites. The strangers are not Israelites in Exodus chapter 12. They may be elsewhere in the text, but not in Exodus 12. I'm going to close out exegeting this real quick, and then I'll take any further questions on the next live stream. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell notification so you can get an alert when we go live again or when we upload content, because a lot of stuff is truly coming to this channel. Again, thank you all for all your support. If you want to support this channel via donations, because we've been demonetized, you got to click on the link in the description below or use one of the methods that's under support in the description below so you can support this channel. And if you have any questions, comments, inquiries, or knowledge that you want to share with us, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. And if there's additional ways that you feel that we can serve the community and even help you individually, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Congrats again to all the winners of the back to school giveaway. We're going to have other giveaways on here as we transition into September. I'm going to do one in late September for y'all. So stay tuned for that. We're going to give out some more computers and stuff like that. All right. So stay tuned. Let me go ahead and address this real quick. And like Aishu Cole says, don't forget the 24/7, 365 after parties always live on the Patreon. Always on the Patreon. Shout out to Lisa Anderson in the building. Shalom, I see that. Yes, Deror Yahoo Ben Dora. Go back and check out that tomorrow. Anytime Sister Light to the Nations. All right, so let me address this real quick. This is Exodus chapter 12, and we are signing off. Exodus 12. By the way, you just learned tonight the word sodomy is not in Scripture. Okay? You may have not known that, but it's not there in Scripture. The act that is referring to is in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17, tied to what we call shrine or cultic ritualistic practices, yes. But that word sodomy is not in Scripture. You want to know where that comes from? Go to etymology or etymon online or etymology online to the dictionary, type in sodomy, and you'll see the origin of where that word comes from. All right. But let me jump down to Exodus 12, starting at verse 43, and we're going to see the different types of strangers there. And again, this has to be aligned and mapped to any other passages where that's referenced. Okay. So check it out. All right. Zachariah, Jean, Yuda 77. You should use Rumble. What is that? Tell me what that is if you don't mind sharing. I appreciate that. Anytime, Lisa, it's a pleasure to serve the community. Thank you for your support continually and your prayers. I appreciate them. Trust me, I feel it when y'all pray. When y'all pray to the Most High, I get some of that residue, man. I feel it. I'm like, oh, they're praying for me. All praise to the Most High. Let's get to the scripture, all right? Shemot, or Exodus chapter 12, verse 43. All right, and it says, instructions for Pesach. And Yotewafe said to Moshe and Haran, this is the statute of the Passover Pesach. No foreigner is to eat of it. Now, here's the question. Is that word foreigner referring to an Israelite? Let's go into these words. We're going to see the different types of quote strangers, that's referenced in this text, right? The first one that we see is the Nakar or Bain Nakar, the son of a foreigner. Shall not eat it. Bain Nakar, the son of a foreigner. Let's go into the word Nakar a little bit more, right? And Nakar means that which is foreign foreignness, from neker, and neker means calamity or misfortune, disaster. This means aliens, foreigners. Strange. You'll see sometimes a strange. We say stranger. They should not eat of it. So the question is that an Israelite? Verse 43. But it says, but any slave who has been purchased may eat of it after you have circumcised him. So let's go into this word here. All right. It's similar to the custom of Abraham. All right. He had to circumcise everyone in his house, or even his servants. The word here is ibed. Ibed could be servant or slave depending upon the loss of status. Is it complete loss of status, 24/7, 365, or is a loss of status only when they have to work to pay back a debt or whatever the case may be? That will determine whether or not you translate this as a slave or servant, right? But every man who was bought with the money, so more than likely it's referring to a foreign slave, you can circumcise them if they live in your household. So what is the difference between the two? Okay, we're going to see as we keep going. A temporary resident or hired hand shall not eat of the Passover. Let's go to verse 45. Okay, verse 45, let's break it down. A sojourner, a tosab, right? Tosab, right? Or a weisakir, and a hired servant shall not eat of it. So this word sojourner, we're going to go into this word sojourner, right? This word toshob, which means a sojourner. What is a sojourner, right? It goes from the word yeshab. Yeshab means to sit, remain, dwell, okay? So typically, your foreign resident, that's what it's talking about, right? The foreign residents who come there, sit and dwell. A lot of times these are temporary residents that dwell or remain for a temporary period of time and then they leave. They cannot eat of the Passover because you have to come into covenant with Yah in order to eat the Passover. And we'll see that as we go on further. Same thing with the Bain Nakar, the son of a foreigner who was born amongst Israel. They cannot eat of it either. So on their own will, might, etc., they cannot eat of it. Especially the one who is a sojourner, who's just coming in, staying, and then leaving at some point, right? But if you go down to verse 47, it says the whole congregation of Israel must celebrate it if a foreigner resides. So we're going to see which one is this. This is 48. Is it Bain Nakar? Is it Toshob? Is it Gar? Is another word for foreigner? We're going to see what we're dealing with here in this verse. And a stranger, this word here is ger. This is a covenantal stranger who wants to keep it. They must be circumcised. You see that? Ger is a different word than Bain Nakar that we saw here in verse 43. And then we see the word ebed, which means a slave, a foreigner that's bought with money. They can eat of it because they're in the household of an Israelite because they have to be circumcised first. And a temporary resident or sojourner, and we got the word here. What was that word for sojourner? See this? To-o. So T-O-O shub. So to-o-shub, or a we-sakir, which is a hired servant, somebody that comes in, does work in the land, and they leave out. Sojourner is the one that comes through, they sit and dwell for a temporary period of time, and then they leave. They can't eat of it. But a gar, or in this case, a ger, a stranger can, and they have to be circumcised. If a foreigner resides with you and wants to celebrate. Now, let's look at this word again. Let's go real quick. Right? This word here. You see this word? Same word in there. Gur, or gor, to sojourn, to turn aside, tarry. Tarry means to wait, right? To sit, to dwell amongst, right? Sojourn, dwell for a definite or indefinite time. Dwell as a newcomer without original rights, and we see other verses for it. But in the case of Exodus 12, they're there for an indefinite period of time because these ger, or these strangers, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 29. These are the ones who later on comes into covenant with Yah amongst the other Israelites. Right here, verse 10. You are standing today, all of you, before the Most High, your power, the heads of your tribes, your elders and your officers, all the other men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and the sojourner who was in your camp. Let's see who this is. Who's that sojourner? The Wegerka. And your sojourner and or your stranger, and this is the stranger who's a resident alien. They can come into covenant because they have been circumcised. They keep Pesach. So they come into covenant along with Israel as a Gentile or a Goy. Okay? These are the ones who we see in Exodus 12 or Shemot 12 that can enter into celebrating the Passover because they have committed themselves to Yah. The other ones that we saw have not. A son of a foreigner, just because they're born in the land, they're still tied to a foreigner, somebody who is not a resident, who will leave. They cannot engage. And anybody that comes and temporarily sojourns or a hired servant, they can't engage. The only ones that can engage is the ger, which is the stranger who is a resident alien amongst Israel and is part of the goyim class, which lives amongst Israel, meaning that there are certain laws that pertain specifically to those individuals that do not pertain to Israelites. And the foreigner who was born within your household, who is your servant or slave that you have purchased, may also enter into the covenant through circumcision and engage in Passover. Okay? So when somebody says that these are strangers or Israelites, there's several words used there. It's at least 3 of them, 4 of them actually, 4 words used. Ask them, is each one of these words represent an Israelite? And if so, tell them to show these words to you elsewhere in the text and see if it describes a native-born Israelite. Okay? All right. All right, so Lawrence Smith, if you want to know about the Neanderthals, I'm going to put an old lecture I did in 2014 in the chat. Give me 1 second. I'm going to drum it up for you. All right, here's the lecture for you. Click on that and check it out, okay? Anytime, Shaw. I'm glad you enjoyed it, my brother. All praise to the Most High, all right? He says, only old men go to sleep this early. Well, I have no problem being called old, and I will get my well-deserved rest because I worked my butt off this week. And I always do my best to try and show up and deliver for y'all. So all praise to the Most High for that. Shout out to my brother Ya'alon Ben Israel in the building. Shalom. Malentheos Zemuri, please email that information to me to kingdomharbinger@gmail.com so I can consider that. Thank you so much for the suggestion. I appreciate that. All right. All right. So V Brand, do you have a lecture on how to thoroughly navigate through a lexicon properly? No, but that's a series I'm gonna start adding to Patreon. However, you can click on that link in the description below, set up a one-on-one consultation, and I'll teach it to you in that one session. No problemo. All right. All right, so I'm gonna close out on tonight. We did good timing on tonight, family. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. Thank you for hanging out with us. Hopefully you learned something, you was edified, educated, empowered, equipped for this journey that we call life, and truth guides you to the light at the end of the tunnel, which is your creator, Yah. And all I'm doing as a pioneer is showing you the way. That's it. You got to walk it yourself. All right. And we're here to be each other's keeper, to be held accountable to one another, to pray and lift each other up, to speak words of encouragement to each other, and also correct each other in love. Right? Stern rebuke if necessary. And if you a man, you can receive that from another man because, you know how to receive that. You know how to walk and handle yourself amongst other men, right? Don't need to get sensitive and emotional about it. Say, brother, you know what? Thank you for the stern correction. I needed that. That's how you talk to another man. You don't be soft and sweet and all this weirdness, right? You do that with a woman and how you handle women. But correction is necessary, and we all could be corrected. Men, you can also be corrected by women. It's okay. And a real woman will correct you behind closed doors because she knows protocol. Unless you're doing something crazy outside, and she may have to check you if you're doing something wild crazy. But for the most part, a woman that knows how to hold her integrity, she'll deal with you behind closed doors and say, hey, babe, you was wrong. Now, you really wild out. Let me tell you why, right? Women have hokmah, wisdom, so men do not be afraid to listen to that. Men, we give instruction and knowledge. So women, do not be afraid to receive that from us. We work together as a team, and only together can we not be alone in this journey to get to our final destination, all right? So with that, family, I love y'all. Thank you for your support. Again, because we have been demonetized, scrolling across the screen and down in the description below are various ways you can support this ministry. And if there's any other services, programs, products, or whatever that we may have mentioned that you're interested in, email us so that way we can send you that information after the Shabbat. So don't do it now. Don't do it during the day tomorrow. But after the Shabbat, well, today, actually, after the sun sets today, we can resume that. We'll make more posts. We'll respond to your comments, etc. And again, please hit the subscribe button if you're brand new. Go back, check out the archives. Hit that bell notification so you can get notifications when we go live next time, when we upload content. Make sure that you hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed tonight's content. We did rapid fire Q&A like we normally do. And make sure you share this in all your social media platforms. If that session that we did last week can get all those thousands of views, every Freestyle Friday we drop gems all the time. So let's get the numbers up so that more people can be exposed to this truth, and we have more content than just engaging with Miss Melissa and whatever lineage she was. I don't know. She happened to be a little bit of everything, according to what she was saying, right? So if that type of content can get views, every time we drop other Freestyle Fridays that have been classics can get the same amount of views, because the content in it is equally as rich, if not richer. And it's designed to serve the community so we can alleviate the societal ill of miseducation in our community, so culture can be restored, community can be rebuilt, and autonomy can be achieved. All right. And with that, let's build our Goshens together as a family. Let's help one another, look out for one another, continue to support one another. And if we can help in any way, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. I love you, family. Thank you for watching. Much ahab. Until next time, peace and shalom.